Can you find the ego? You can find the self? So then does that self exist in the same way all the time? Does it, that self that you found, does it exist in the same way all the time? Does it change? Or not sure? So we found a self, an ego, we feel somewhere inside us, and what we're saying is that it has a certain size which increases when it's attacked, when something negative happens, that self increases. Okay? And then you'd be responding from a point of insecurity, right? A bigger sense of ego, of self, insecurity, and lacking in confidence would be the response to the negative situations. If we're going with the ego, if we're responding with the ego, what would it do to you? Would it help your positive qualities, or would it detract? Would it take away from your positive qualities? Because on this floor, you're talking about there are delusions and you want to transform the delusions. So then underlying the delusions is the self. Right? The I, which experiences the anger. The I, which experiences the jealousy, the hatred, whatever it is. It's that I. So we've got these three circles. Me, you. So it's called 3 circles of emptiness. Sort of like that. 3 circles of emptiness. Me, I, you, them, and action. So whenever we're going to do anything important, if we start out with the 3 circles of emptiness, which is I, do I exist? Is there an I? You, do you exist? Is there a you? And then the action, does the action actually exist? So when we look for the I, this is the first part that we're on, we're looking for that I that seems to exist, but actually appears and disappears, doesn't it? It's not there all the time in the same way. So that was the first analysis, evaluation that we looked at. Is it always the same, or does it change? So the I is usually very associated with the negative. You've insulted me, you don't agree with me, you don't like me. Then in response to the negative, then the I usually appears. I don't like that. And then in response to what we would call positive, I really like it, the I usually appears, I really like that. And in between, it tends to be a bit fuzzy, a bit wishy-washy, a bit grey, not really discernible, can't really find it, but it appears to be there. But very apparent when we're in a negative situation and when we're in a very desire attachment situation, something that we like. Okay? So, we're talking about the negative, but because what we want to do is remove the negative and improve the positive. So it's no use talking about the positive without addressing the negative. Okay, if you keep talking about the positive, we want to have loving kindness and compassion, all these good qualities, but we don't address the negative, then there's no space, there's no room for the negative to develop. So we're removing one thing from the room, we're taking something out of the room, and we're putting something back into the room. So the room is the mind, the space. What we want to do is clear out the negative. So the biggest negative, according to Buddhism, is the self. This is the biggest problem. This is the root of all delusions, of all afflictive states of mind, is the self. And I think that what we should say is that there's 2 types of self. One can be a very positive self, wants to benefit others, and we heard this, on the floor. We had, I want to develop to help others, I want to help to train others, to develop, to do things for others. So this is a positive self. Then the other is the negative self, the angry self, the irritable self, the hatred self. So anything negative, then we can put into a category, negative self, the one that is not beneficial. Okay? So we can classify it as something not beneficial, because when we're being negative, when we're attaching to that self, we can now respond in a negative way. Then we have the positive self. You want to change something in work, you want to help the environment, you want to help your family, whatever it is. So I remember many years ago, the Dalai Lama, he was teaching in Delhi, and I'd helped to organize this teaching, and we were sitting in the very front row, and there were only about 4 Westerners and 4,000 Indians. And he said, at the very beginning of the talk, you Westerners have got Buddhism wrong. And I thought, what have we done? We must have done something wrong in the stage or something like this. And he said, what you think is we're completely trying to remove all self. But we're not. What we're doing is we're removing the negative self. Because when you think of positive actions, you think, I'm doing the positive action. And that I is not a problem. When you're doing something to help others, when you're improving yourself to help others to train, when you're improving yourself to be more patient, that I is not a problem. But the I that we're talking about to remove is the one that does cause a problem, is the obstacle in communication between me and you. So remember yesterday we were talking about loving kindness. It's the opposite of loving kindness. I want you to be happy, right? Because this self does not want you to be happy. If it's an angry self, a hatred self, an attachment, desire self, it does not necessarily want you to be happy. It doesn't care about your suffering. What it's relating to is me. It's feeding itself. Okay? So it can be very negative, it can be slightly negative, it can disappear, and then it can reappear as positive. And it's all just like a dream or an illusion or a mirage. It's not real in the way that we think it's real. It's not real in the way we think. So the way we think about the self is, something solid, hard, real like this. But in actual fact, the self arises in relation to causes and conditions. Okay? So the causes and conditions are me, within myself, is the cause, my response to the world, and the world is the condition. So that coming together of the causes and conditions produces an illusion of a self. You following? The cause is within me. The condition is around me. And then the meeting of those causes and conditions produces a mirage or a dream or an illusion, as if we've created an elephant or a tiger, and the tiger I've created through magic is in the room, but does the tiger really exist because it's created by magic? Or in the dream, is the tiger really existent? So these are the examples given to make you think, yes, in the dream I feel as though something's real, but when I wake up I recognize it's not real. So when this becomes important is when you're facing the enemy. Because when you face the enemy, you think the enemy is real. And my ego, myself, is real. So me, you, and then the interaction between you, which is the third one, the action. So in this communication you have ego, and then the clashing of the egos, and then no communication, no cooperation, no harmony. So when we're talking about the three circles of emptiness, it's to understand that there is an appearance of a self. The self does appear, like the rainbow. I think the rainbow is a really good example of how causes and conditions produce something. Okay? You understand the causes and conditions produce the rainbow. So in order to have a perception of a rainbow, you need the sun, you need water drops in the air, you need a certain angle of the sun in order for the rainbow to appear. So suddenly, this rainbow appears in the sky, but you also need eye consciousness and a brain and a mind in order to have that perception of rainbow. But does the rainbow truly exist? Truly means existing without causes and conditions. So do you think it exists with causes and conditions or without causes and conditions? Thank goodness you're here. I mean, it's fairly obvious, but we need to be really clear about it, that yes, it exists because of causes and conditions. So, out of causes and conditions, from causes and conditions, the rainbow appears. But if you look for the rainbow, you go and search for it, and you go this way, this way, this way, you can search in every direction, the rainbow still appears, but it also shifts and it moves. And depending on the angle, it could completely disappear altogether. Or the sun goes behind the clouds, the rainbow disappears. So in the same way, when we're looking for this negative ego, we don't normally look for it when we're negative. Okay? When we're feeling angry, we don't normally look for the I, which is angry. Right? What you're looking for is an affirmation of the anger. You're right to be angry. You understand? So it's very important that step by step, because we're building one step on the other, what you've got is this basic illusion, the self exists. Buddhism says it's an illusion. Right? It's existing in relation to causes and conditions. It's not there the same way every single time. If it was, it would be findable. But because it's shifting, it's moving in relation to causes and conditions, then it's subject to change. It's subject to impermanence. That means you can change your mind. And they also can change their mind. It's not one-sided. I can change my mind because of the changing nature of phenomena, impermanence, and this mind is subject to change. And this self is arising because of the coming together of causes and conditions. It's all coming together to produce an illusion, rainbow, tiger in the dream, that sort of illusion. Now, if I've created an illusion, if I'm a magician, and I say to you, there's a tiger, and you all see the tiger, and you feel afraid because there's a tiger there. Should I believe in the tiger? If I have a delusion, I also believe in the tiger. But I'm the one who created the illusion. Right? So I should know this is not a real tiger. You understand? So there should be a difference between me and you, in that I created the illusion around the candle, you didn't. You believed in the illusion, so you only see the tiger. You don't see the candle. Okay? So in the same way, you're creating the illusion of the self, the I, the ego. And if you get to know that you're creating that illusion, you become like the magician. You understand, I'm creating this illusion. There's an appearance of the illusion, but I don't believe in the illusion. That then gives you the power and the strength to behave in a different way, because you're not attaching to the ego, to the self. You're now detaching from the self. You're seeing the self in a different way, as something that's being created from causes and conditions, not something that is inherently existent. So we talk about something as being inherent or not. And the definition of inherent means something existing without causes and conditions. So can that self exist without causes and conditions? You say, no. It has to exist because of causes and conditions. Right? So because of causes and conditions, the self appears. But does the self always manifest in exactly the same way? In which case, it would be inherent, unchanging. Is it unchanging? So you check yourself, right? Am I always angry? Inherent would mean I'm always angry. 24 hours a day, I wake up, I'm angry, I go to bed, I'm angry, I sleep, I'm angry. It would never change, it would always be the same. On and on and on, from birth to death. So is your mind permanently, unchangingly angry? Or jealous, or hatred, or whatever it is, whatever your delusion is it unchanging? Then you think about it and you think, well, no, it does change. This delusion has the potential to change and to transform. Sometimes it can change into happiness. Sometimes the happiness then becomes something else. So you can see how the mind is changing. So when that self appears, when does it appear? In relation to what does it appear? Usually very negative and very positive. And the very negative provokes you into a reaction. The self appears, right? And now it's me, myself, against you. Not only does the self appear, but we attach to the self. We grasp on to the self. So, first of all, there's an appearance of self. Then we grasp onto that self. Mine, right? So internally, in the mind, what we're doing is we're holding on to the self and saying, I want you to be happy. I don't want you to suffer. And then, in response to that, we cherish the self. Okay, so, appearance of self, this is the illusion. Then, in response to that, self-grasping. And because of that, self-cherishing. Do you understand the word cherishing? Even many Western people don't understand when I say cherishing. It's like having a baby. If you have a baby, you have to constantly refer to the baby, otherwise it dies, right? So in this case, we're constantly referring to the self. Are you okay? Are you comfortable? Do you want something? This is happening internally, in a dialogue that happens internally. You okay? Comfortable? Want something? Popcorn? Tea? Coffee? And on automatic, we go to the fridge, we get something, we switch channels. We don't necessarily think about what we're doing, but we're trying to please this self that appears to exist, that wants happiness, doesn't want suffering. And its method of gaining that happiness and removing the suffering is through attachment. So the attachment comes from self-grasping. Self-grasping is, I hold on. So the self appears, the illusion appears like the rainbow. Imagine trying to hold on to the rainbow, trying to grasp onto it and not let go of it. So the self appears as an illusion in response to your world, and then you grasp onto it. This is mine, and I don't want it to suffer, and I want it to be happy. So what should I do in order to make it happy and stop it from suffering? And this is the internal dialogue that goes on. So what would you like? And what would you not like? So what I'd like is not to talk to this person. And what I don't want is to be in that situation. So the mind is constantly sorting out the situations it would like to be in and the situations it doesn't want to be in. But what happens when you're in a situation you can't control? Which is in work, a lot of the time you're in situations you can't control. Bless you, my child. Isn't it? You can't always work with people that you want to work with. You can't always deal with people that you want to deal with. And so then this becomes very important, because when you understand your primary response to the world is through the self, the ego, this grasping onto the ego, the attachment to the ego, and because of that, the cherishing of the ego, the taking care of the ego, and everybody else is doing the same thing. So not only does it give you information about yourself, it gives you information about them. How are they responding? What are they doing?